He took everything, even our dog. Those words, which I myself had whispered to my sister on the phone, echoed in my mind as I changed the locks on the house. At 68 years old, I never imagined that the person with whom I had shared over 40 years of my life could leave me like this, without warning, taking not only the memories but also the dignity and my beloved buddy, our golden retriever. It was a cold Tuesday in November in Scottsdale, Arizona. The sun, which usually bathed our house with a welcoming warmth, seemed to have hidden, reflecting the emptiness Richard had left. He left while I was at my yoga class, one of the few activities I kept for myself. I came home to find a short note on the kitchen counter, in his hasty handwriting. "Penelope, I can't take it anymore. I'm leaving. Don't look for me." And along with it, the absence of Buddy, his food bowl, and his leash. The pain of betrayal was immense, but the absence of my furry companion was a stab to the heart. If you've ever felt the pain of an unexpected loss, or the disappointment of a broken promise, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel to follow this story, because what happened next made me question everything I knew about love, loyalty, and justice. I was there, alone, in a house that suddenly seemed too big, too empty, trying to understand how the life I had built with such care could crumble in a matter of hours. With each click of the new lock, I felt a mix of anger and a strange determination. He might have taken everything, but he wouldn't take my peace. Richard and I married young, at 22. He was my first and only love, an engineer with a captivating smile and eyes that promised a secure future. I, Penelope, was always the dreamer, the artist, but also the anchor of our family. I gave up my passion for painting to take care of the house, our children, now adults and living in other cities, and to support his career. Our friends always saw us as the perfect couple, the example of a lasting marriage. But behind the appearances, there were cracks that I, in my naivety, preferred to ignore. In recent years, Richard had become more distant, more absorbed in his own thoughts. I attributed this to work stress, routine, age. He spent hours at the office, or at the golf club, as he would say. I, on the other hand, filled my days with gardening, volunteering at the community library, and of course with Buddy, who was my confidant and shadow. He was the joy of the house, a loyal companion who made me laugh even on the grayest days. The idea that Richard had taken him, that he had torn him away from me, was almost as painful as his own departure. I was always the one who solved problems, who kept the house running, who took care of everything. Richard was the provider, yes, but I was the foundation. And now that foundation had been shaken, but I was not a weak woman. Life had already taught me some hard lessons, and I knew I had an inner strength he underestimated. As the new locks were installed, a plan began to form in my mind. I wasn't going to sink into sadness. I was going to find out why, and I was going to fight for what was mine. Night fell heavily over Scottsdale. I was sitting in the living room, a cup of chamomile tea in my hands, trying to calm my nerves. The house was silent, a silence that was once comforting, but now was deafening. Suddenly, my cell phone, which I had set aside, vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the message. "You forgot the safe." My blood ran cold. The safe. Richard had a small safe built into the garage wall, hidden behind some old tools. I knew of its existence, but I had never been interested in its contents. He always said it was for important business documents, but the message, coming from a number I didn't recognize, and Richard's tone, which seemed to know I hadn't found it, put me on alert. Why would he warn me about something he himself had left behind? Was it an oversight or a trap? I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. Adrenaline began to rush through my veins. I grabbed a flashlight and the new keys, which now seemed a symbol of my new forced independence. The garage was a place Richard always kept organized, but now it seemed a labyrinth of shadows and memories. I found the safe's location, behind an old toolbox. With trembling hands, I entered the combination Richard always used for everything. The date of our wedding anniversary. The click of the lock sounded loud in the night's silence. I opened the safe door, and what I saw inside made me let out a scream so loud, so primal, that it echoed through the neighborhood, waking the dogs, and I knew, the neighbors. It was something I never, in my worst nightmares, could have imagined, and I knew at that instant that my life would never be the same. The scream that escaped my throat was not of fear, but of a chilling horror that paralyzed me. Inside the safe, there were no business documents, no hidden jewels, no money. There was a small wooden box, carefully carved, and upon opening it, My eyes met what appeared to be a collection of small objects, but they weren't ordinary objects. They were dog collars. Small ones of different sizes and colors, some worn, others almost new, and on each one an identification tag with names engraved. Max, Daisy, Charlie, Bella, and the last, the most recent, with the name Buddy. My stomach churned. Buddy, my Buddy. His collar was there. It wasn't possible. Richard couldn't have done this. My mind tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. Those collars, each representing a pet that had mysteriously disappeared from the neighborhood over the years. Animals that I, in my naivety, believed had gotten lost or run away. Richard was always so affectionate with Buddy, so protective. How could he have... The air left my lungs. The safe contained proof of unimaginable cruelty. A dark secret my husband had kept for decades. That man I loved, that I trusted, was a monster. The image of Buddy, my sweet and loyal companion, in Richard's hands, made me feel a sharp pain, deeper than the marital betrayal itself. I wasn't just discovering an affair or financial fraud. I was unearthing the perverse soul of someone I thought I knew. The smell of metal and dust from the garage mingled with the odor of an unspeakable evil. The scream I let out wasn't just mine. It was the scream of all the families who had lost their animals, the scream of all broken hearts. Within minutes, the neighborhood lights began to turn on. I heard worried voices, and soon after, the distant sound of sirens. I was still kneeling before the open safe. The collars scattered on the garage floor, unable to move, to think, to breathe. When the first police officers arrived, the scene they found must have been shocking. A 68-year-old woman, in pajamas, kneeling in a dark garage, crying hysterically over a collection of dog collars. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" A young officer asked, his voice cautious. I couldn't speak. I just pointed to the safe, to the collars, to Buddy's collar. Gradually, more patrol cars arrived, and the once quiet street of Scottsdale transformed into an investigation scene. Neighbors, curious and concerned, watched from their windows. I explained between sobs about Richard, about Buddy, about the mysterious message and the safe. The officers, initially skeptical, began to take the situation seriously when they saw the number of collars and, especially Buddy's. One of them, more experienced, recognized some of the names on the tags. Max, Daisy, those are the dogs that disappeared years ago in the area, aren't they? The confirmation came like an electric shock. Richard was not just an unfaithful husband. He was a criminal. The house, which was once my refuge, was now a crime scene, and I, the main witness. The night dragged on with testimonies and questions. The police searched the house, looking for any clue that could lead to Richard or, more importantly, to Buddy. I, Penelope, was exhausted, but the pain and anger kept me awake. How could I have been so blind? How could I have lived with a man capable of such cruelty for so long? As the officers worked, my mind began to revisit every detail of the past few years. Richard's excuses for his absences, the times he seemed strangely pleased with the disappearance of a neighborhood pet, the comments about stray animals he cared for. Everything fit into a macabre pattern. He wasn't just abandoning me. He was fleeing a life of crime that I, unknowingly, had financed and covered up. The police informed me that Richard was now a fugitive, and that a large-scale investigation would be launched. But for me, the priority was only one: to find Buddy. He was the only innocent part of this story, the only creature I couldn't leave in the hands of that monster. The message about the safe, which initially seemed like a provocation, now sounded like a plea for help, or perhaps a belated confession. I didn't know what Richard intended, but I knew I couldn't rest until I had Buddy back. Richard's web of lies had unraveled, and I, Penelope, was determined to fully untangle it, not just for justice, but for love of my faithful companion. The early morning hours blurred into flashing lights and tense voices. My children, Sarah and David, who lived in Phoenix and Los Angeles, respectively, were alerted by neighbors and arrived in Scottsdale before dawn. The look of shock on their faces, upon seeing the garage and hearing the story, mirrored my own disbelief. "Dad did this? It's not possible, Mom," David exclaimed as Sarah hugged me, tears streaming down her face. Their support was a balm to my wounded soul. The police, armed with the collars and my testimony, launched an intensive search for Richard. News of the Scottsdale collar monster, as the local press quickly dubbed him, spread like wildfire. Neighbors, once curious, were now horrified and sympathetic. Many came forward to give statements about their own missing pets, and Richard's list of victims only grew. But for me, the only thing that mattered was Buddy. With Sarah and David's help, we created posters with Buddy's photo and the story, spreading them throughout the city and on social media. The community united in a hunt for my golden retriever. We received hundreds of messages of support, tips, and even volunteers to help with the search. The pain of betrayal was still raw, but the strength and solidarity I received gave me the energy to continue. I was no longer alone. The hunt for Buddy was not just for a pet. It was for justice, for redemption, and for proof that love and loyalty still existed in a world Richard had tried to make dark. The turning point came from where I least expected it. A security camera at a gas station on the state border. Richard, with Buddy in the passenger seat, was caught fueling up the car. The image of Buddy, with a sad but alive look, filled my heart with renewed hope. The police acted quickly. Richard was located and arrested at a small motel on the New Mexico border, trying to use a credit card he had stolen from me. News of Richard's arrest spread rapidly. Local and national press covered the case, and the story of the collar monster shocked everyone. But the real emotion came when the police called me. "Mrs. Penelope, we found Buddy. He's safe and waiting for you." The drive to the police station was the longest of my life. When I saw him, my heart exploded with joy. Buddy, a little thinner and scared but alive, ran to me, jumping and licking my face. That hug was the redemption I needed. Richard was interrogated, and, in his cold and calculating confession, revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior. He collected pets, not out of love, but out of a sick sense of control and power. He would take them, keep them for a while, and then abandon them in other cities, just to feel the thrill of escaping and deceiving everyone. Buddy was the last of a long list. Justice, though delayed, was being served. Richard was charged with multiple crimes, including animal cruelty and theft, and the community, once fooled by his respectable facade, now saw him for the monster he truly was. The months that followed were filled with healing and rebuilding. Richard was sentenced to a long prison term, and the house, once a stage for betrayal, was cleansed of his presence. With the support of my children and the community, I transformed the pain into purpose. I opened a small sanctuary for rescued animals, in honor of Buddy and all of Richard's victims. I named it Penelope's Refuge, a place where abandoned animals found love, safety, and a second chance. I returned to my passion for painting, and my canvases, once filled with tranquil landscapes, now exploded with vibrant colors, portraying the resilience and beauty of life. My children, Sarah and David, grew even closer, and our family, once shaken, became stronger. Buddy, my faithful companion, was always by my side, a constant reminder that, even in the worst storms, true love prevails. At 68, I had learned the most valuable lesson of my life. True strength lies not in avoiding pain, but in facing it and transforming it. Richard's midnight message, which froze my blood, ultimately became the catalyst for a new dawn. I was no longer the naive and blind Penelope. I was a woman who had found her voice, her strength, and her purpose. And you, listening to this story, remember, life can surprise us with unexpected challenges, but it is in our ability to overcome them that we discover who we truly are. If this story touched your heart, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share your own experiences in the comments. Together, we can build a world where love and justice always find their way.